I think of Rome, I think of, going to the Colosseum, right? That's like something outdoors I would really want to see. But did you have an idea, or did people tell you things, or how did you just discover by exploring?
Yeah, I feel like the reason I wanted to go to Italy was because I watched the Lizzie McGuire movie as a kid.
Yes.
And that like set my expectations of, wow, this is the Italian dream. Like, this is what I want. Mm-hmm. I think though, like after I arrived, like I said, everything was just so new to me. And I learned really quickly that like, and I'm a study abroad advisor, and I tell this in my job too, you have to be careful with the expectations that you set, because you're going to like exceed them and surpass them. So I always encourage all of my students, and I think I tried myself to have like a blank slate.
You met people throughout the orientation, and then did they have like all these experiences planned out for you, like the whole year?
Kind of. I mean, they have a few planned trips for the whole program. Like, they would take us to this beautiful church in Florence, or they would take us to like a nearby Tuscan town. And I think these planned like trips were probably once to twice a month. Like, we had a lot of them, and some of them were like excursions. So there was like an excursion to Rome, and it was 3 days, or we went to Venice for 2 days. It just depended if they were like extensive or not.
If you were wanting to give advice to someone to pay it forward for studying abroad, what would it be, especially when it comes to, interacting with nature, as well as what it's like to be immersed in that country? So I actually probably have a 2-part question. So we'll keep that as the first part.
Okay. I think in terms of like paying it forward and like respecting like your environment and your nature, I think it's very important to be, and this is not something I've always done, but something I've been trying to do since, and also what I preach in my work is like try to be as sustainable as possible. I think there's different sustainability standards in your home country than in your host country. And like a great example of it now, more so than when I was there 10 years ago, is there's like an energy crisis in Europe.
Oh, wow.
And so it's very important that you know how you have to conserve energy, and how you can only have the shower on for this amount of time, or you can only like make sure you turn off your lights. It's like little things you don't always try to do when you're at home, but that's part of like being respectful to your host country. Is you're a foreigner in their environment, and you need to respect like what they're trying to do for themselves as a whole. And I also like always tell students, like, if you can be sustainable in your travel, like try to take like a train rather than a plane, or try to do things locally rather than go like to a new country every weekend.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how would you advise people, like, do you have any off the top of your head resources that people can go to find out like conditions of their host country? Like, are there in a study abroad program, do they offer those?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of the time, a lot of that information usually is presented during like orientations on site, and they usually tell you like, of course, like health and safety stuff, and also like what you need to do and being responsible like for yourself and your own actions. I know some programs will have like a representative from the embassy come in and like tell you about like being on your best behavior, and just being like thoughtful in your actions. I know in terms of like other resources, I always tell students to like do research, watch videos, go to the foreign ministry's website of the country you're going to, look at the embassy, like your home country's embassy in that country, just making sure you're kind of aware of where you can find resources and expectations for your behavior going into your program.
Did you feel, and the other students that you were with, did you guys feel pretty safe? Were there any times you felt unsafe?
Yeah, I think from my personal experience, like I said, I was 18 and I'd come from a small town, and I don't think I truly understood what I was getting myself into. And it was nice because we had a pretty tight-knit like community in my program. There were only like 20-ish of us the first semester and like 40 the second semester. So I do think when you have a bubble, it's pretty easy to think that you're always going to be safe. I think I pretty much felt safe. There were things I had to learn the hard way, like, travel in pairs or don't walk home by yourself at night. Like things that are that you should probably do when you're at home anyways,
right?
Not just abroad. But I think safety is something that is an ever-growing conversation, especially in our day and age. And I think it's just very important when you do go abroad to be aware that you're not in your home space, and listen to the people that give you guidance about safety.
Would you do things like, and do you recommend that when somebody's abroad and say they do something maybe with a friend, like one friend or even two friends, or by themselves, did you let other people know where you were, or check-in process, or how was that? Or was that even something with study abroad that you were supposed to check in? Or I don't know. Is that it's kind of like a policy that they have?
I think that's the tricky thing about studying abroad. And from my personal experience, there was a check-in system. We had to, not check in like where we were all day, but if we were leaving like the country, we had to like log it and say where we were going, where we were staying, who we were going with, and how we could be contacted. I think each program is different, and that's tricky because you are an adult going on program if you're doing it like, higher education. So I think that's the tricky thing people struggle with is you're in a completely new environment. You don't know where you are, but you are an adult and you have to be responsible for keeping yourself safe. I know a lot of like programs will have like check-in apps. Like sometimes there's like global assistance apps where you can check yourself in safe. We always encourage, check in. Usually there's a system for your home country. For example, like travel.state.gov, you can register yourself through travel.state.gov. So if there's an emergency, like they know where you are.
Wow.
You should probably do that before you leave the country, right?
Yes, do that before you leave. Exactly.
Okay.
Just in case.
Something else I was really curious about. So you said you had some planned excursions and some, whether they were for just a day or for maybe several days. But what would you say the balance was percentage-wise of doing things, your experiences? I would say particularly outdoors because we are an outdoor company, so we're really interested in that. So whether it was hiking or jumping off cliffs or or whatever it is, going to beaches, going to ruins. There's so much that you can do outdoors, but what do you think the percentage of experiences that you did with you and your friends versus what the university or the study abroad program did, and how would you think would you say one was better over the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think at first I was kind of being stubborn and was like, I just want to do everything myself. Like this is my Italian adventure. And in reality, I wish I'd taken advantage more. Like they offered, like the second weekend we were there, they offered like a walking tour and then the walk up to the church. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna like sleep a little and do my laundry and then like hang out with my friends. And in reality, I was really missing out on an opportunity to see Florence from the perspective of people who lived there. And I think that's something a lot of people go in is having this feeling like I can do it myself, but not having like any idea of how to get that started. And that's something if I could change something, I would have done every opportunity, at least at the beginning. And I think there's a certain point where like, you can plan your own adventures, but also being like aware of everything there is to do. rather than just like going to Rome or going to Venice. Like, where can I go locally? What can I enjoy locally?
Absolutely.
And that's something I think that I didn't fully take advantage of at the beginning.
Yeah, because there's so many, like, I mean, I wouldn't even know, I haven't been there, but and in every city or area, like, there's like all these like hidden gems, right? And it's just like hearing from, like, as a listener from a traveler, I hear like Rome and Venice and Italy, and I'm like, wow, that must have been amazing. But I hear like the big names, but it's like all these, like, there's like all like the nitty gritty, like cute little things that that I feel like we should hear more about. You know? And people, I think, maybe this is my assumption, but when you sign up for study abroad, I'm like, as long as I check it off the list, but there's like so much more to it. Right?
Absolutely.
Did you meet anybody that went to Florence before you that was like, gave you great advice?
No, we were all like brand new. The program was very, I think evergreen is the word. Like, we were very small, and it had been going on. The program had been going on since like the 60s, but I don't think it had really caught traction, because there was another program in Spain where they were getting like 100 to 150 people per semester.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And when I went to Florence, it was like 20 to 40 maximum.
That's crazy.
So I think that there wasn't a lot of like alumni to talk to. And I hadn't really known anyone that had been to Italy. So it was kind of nice going in clueless, but didn't really have a lot of guidance.
Well, do you think that, I don't know, I think it would be helpful, but maybe not, because not having setting your expectations, but maybe, you know, if you were able to talk to a study abroad student who went to that place, or like we were hoping with Nature's Playbook that people are also sharing, paying it forward with some great experiences. So, you know, other people can see, is that a place that I connect with, that I want to do that? Do I want to have that kind of experience? Because I have so much time here, right? You have limited time. And I feel like you could probably spend a lot of time with like, going through a couple months or several months before you're like, oh, okay, I really should be putting myself out there. I really should be having these experiences. But I was clueless and didn't know what direction to go in. And so you kind of like are timid to go out. Or
Did you feel like there were any like barriers like that where you were intimidated by travel at all? Like, whether, I mean, we already talked about safety, but it like, even just like the knowledge barrier, like, and how did you overcome any of those?
I think it's scary, like, whenever you go to a new country, like, you don't know where you are, you don't know the language if, you know, you're going to a country that's non-native, your native language speaking. And I think for me, going to Italy, where I was in my location is a big study abroad hub, so there was a lot of English speaking. So that definitely helped me at first, in terms of like feeling comfortable because I could communicate in English. But I also think that's something also unique and important to study abroad, is like pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes that's why I encourage students to go to non-traditional locations. And circling back to your question on like guidance and advice, that's kind of where I lean on connecting like students to people that have gone to non-traditional locations. Because I think Italy and Europe, like those places are always going to sell themselves.
Yeah.
But there's places like Ghana, Botswana, Thailand, Indonesia, where study abroad doesn't have as much of a presence, and that's why it's important to have like those stories being told to encourage students to go and learn about those communities and those cultures. And it's a different type of study abroad, but it's like equally as important, if not more important, than going to the traditional ones you hear about.
You probably don't get to have as much as the resources, because there's not as much out there for those countries, as you were saying. I was curious because you have traveled to so many countries, even further than study abroad, you know. after that time frame, what is the first thing that I feel like this is paying it forward too. What is the first thing you do to a country when you get to a new country? Like, do you have like a sort of system, like, okay, I'm here now, and this is the first things I do?
Yeah, I think I definitely have kind of not perfected it, but worked on my approach to when I get to a new country. And I think it depends on like the context of which I'm coming to the country. But I always try, like, within my first few moments of being there, after I get to my hostel and I, hotel, and I take off my luggage and have a second to like deep breathe, because it depends how far you've traveled. Yes. But I always try to just walk around. I always go to like a local coffee shop. I try to find like maybe away from like the tourist areas and just walk. You can do like a walking tour. A lot of the time, especially in Europe, a lot of the walking tours are free, and you just tip like based on your enjoyment of the tour. So I think that's always a cool way to do it from like a local. And the locals, because they make their commission on tips, like they're just excited to tell you about like where they live. So that's what I try to do first, rather than like jump into like a tour that I would pay for, or like a bus, like a hop on, hop off bus or something.
When you go to a new country and, culturally you're interacting with people, and is there something that you just feel like is totally not universal? Because as Americans, I think we reach out, we're very friendly, outspoken, and want to interact with everybody, but that might not be the case everywhere. Or what's something you're like, this is something you would probably not do, or you definitely should do?
Yeah, I think that's something really cool about being, from any culture, but in my experience as an American, when you go abroad, like everyone is going to have different perspectives of like your own home culture. And I think it's a very like important and valuable opportunity for you to discuss like those perspectives on your home culture, and in some ways like refute it if you feel like it doesn't, hold true to what you see as being, true to your home culture. And that's something like I really enjoy doing, or I've learned how to do more so the more I travel, is there's gonna be perspectives you hold on their culture too, where even if it's a negative, neutral, or positive light, it might not necessarily be their truth. So that's why it's super important to be extremely open, patient, and also like understanding. If you go abroad and someone says something like about your home culture, or they assume something about you and your identity, you can't necessarily get upset. You have to be willing to listen and see how they formed that perspective. And then you can have like an open conversation with them and grow together. And you're not always going to find people willing to do that, but I think when you are able to like really immerse yourself and meet people from your host culture and have those conversations, you're both going to be better from having it.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, okay? And then we need a hard stop. Off the top of your head, 3 outdoor places. It could be anything like a lake, an ocean, a beach, or a hike, whatever. 3 outdoor places in Italy. You're like, that was amazing.
Okay. There's so many. I spent a lot of time after I studied abroad living in North Italy when I taught English. So I think for me, North Italy holds a special place in my heart. Lake, it's called Lago di Garda. It's Lake Garda, and it's about an hour and a half from Milan by train. I think a lot of people want or think of Lake Como when they think of North Italy, which is gorgeous, but Lake Garda is definitely more like local, and a lot of more European tourists go there. I'm trying to think. Lake Garda, and then also I would say like the mountains, like the Dolomites in Italy are very gorgeous. Bressanone is one of my favorite little ski towns.
Oh, ski town.
We love a good ski town. It's actually cool because Bressanone is the Italian name for the town, and Brixen is the German name for the town.
Oh.
And they go by both names because there's both. It's in Italy, but it used to be part of Austria.
What?
So that's why when you go there, they speak both languages.
That's so cool.
And everything's in 2 languages, like all the signs.
Oh my gosh, what?
So
That sounds like such a fun experience.
when I was skiing, like I spoke Italian, but I brought my friend who didn't speak either, and she had to learn how to say attention in German and Italian, so we didn't run into anyone when we were skiing. So that was pretty cool.
That's good.
Oh, we can wrap it up. I know you gotta go. Thank you so much for your time, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
I want to hear more about like all of your travels because
Yeah.
I know you've been like through the cruise ships and everything like crazy.
Yeah, we might have to have multiple
follow-ups
and maybe
Yeah.
even just a certain country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.